what are they doing? But mostly, why are they doing it? As an observer, what is actually attractive in this action? What is in this dialogue of sorts that intrigues me? Maybe I'm interested in see who will eventually prevail, and it shall be more and more exciting when I know the contenders better. I'll feel their emotional engagement, their mastery in the performance of the actions, their confidence in achieving result. In fact, I'm interested in the result achieved through the beauty of an action that is balanced between instinct and knowledge, and deeply rooted in that, both human or animal, that lives it. And what does all this have to do with improvisation? Well, actually, every action in sport entails improvisation. It is a perfect balance between training, the acquisition of tools, and creativity of the moment that allows you to react using the right tool in the right place at the right moment. Perhaps some of these strategies could help us to investigate the effectiveness of an act which aims to achieve a winning result. So, improvisation is a precious opportunity to profoundly master the expressive and therefore communicative act. Therefore, my research question is, what are the mechanisms that can help to make my improvisation charged with expressive force and effective in communicative results? In other words, this is the story of the Helicona project, my research path towards expressive improvisation. Eric, a violinist with a great desire to convey a breath of fresh air to the music in his concerts, will accompany us along this journey. When I watch a movie, or listen to a speech, or even follow a sports event, I seek a victorious finale, or a story of love, or a tale of sorrow, or the conquest of a summit. An action with a direction is desired, an energy that goes one way rather than another. Maybe we need a purpose, or rather a content. In the 1600s, these ideas were called affects, that is, feelings, vices, passions, virtues, which are sparks that move our actions, or our invention. Without the content, it would be like watching an eternal warm-up session without seeing the match. It would surely be interesting at the beginning, but become boring over time. For Eric, it would be like saying, what story am I going to tell my audience? But content alone is not enough. To make it effective, you need to give it a shape. Otherwise, it would be like playing an endless game or a show, or walking down a road without a destination. And our Eric would play a song where there are no phrases, there are no beginnings nor conclusions. Hence, passions, desires, dreams take shape and become organized actions. The more these processes are refined, the more effective the result will be. And it is clear as Eric will receive an applause. But when we have a content to tell, how do we shape it? How do we organize the form in an effective way? I noticed that when my gesture is successful, I repeat it, refine it, and I can use it as a strategy as many times as I want. This principle leads to the research and definition of effective expressive codes. Therefore, the expressive code is the effective synthesis of an inner effort and the outer representation. Over the centuries, this is the process that has allowed us to collect the forms that best represent a content. History, therefore, seems to be a process of selection and stratification of expressive codes and effective strategies which have been handed down. Experience and education have gradually experimented, organized, sometimes transformed, and therefore transmitted knowledge. Over time, in the development of society, the search of a form and organization of knowledge has increasingly become stronger. Indeed, the impression is that our society has developed to such an extent that the form is no longer even connected with the content. In fact, it seems that in the face of a crescendo in the organized part, there is a diminuendo of our emotional connection to what we communicate. Actually, research in various fields demonstrates the unfortunate emotional disconnection in our society. In fact, many fields discuss about emotional intelligence, social discomforts, lack of memory, the danger of using social media, as well as the economy of experience. Here, Eric finds himself performing fewer and fewer concerts because music is not considered necessary. If anything, simply boring. So I went looking for a solution in history to try and understand where the balance between emotional involvement and the organization of expressive code lied. Where could the halfway, the mezzo forte, the balance point between this crescendo and diminuendo be? The answer, I found, encompasses a rather large period of time. Although some specific circumstances straddling the Renaissance and Baroque period can be pointed out. This is the period leading to the scientific revolution, in which analytical thinking, the crescendo, becomes more relevant in every subject, to the detriment of analogical thinking, the diminuendo. Analytical reasoning is the one rooted in deductive thinking, and the one that defines scientific processes through the syllogism, proceeding from the universal to the particular. Analogical reasoning is the one based on inductive thinking, which means that through the use of the senses, one tends to formulate analogies, from the particular to the universal. See Aristotle. The first type of reasoning determines formulas, establishes processes, and organizes knowledge. The responsibility lies within the system. The second one narrates the sensitivity of the individual, their perception and their personal history. The responsibility lies with the individual. What does this mean for our Eric? In a few words, it influences him in understanding that study, technique, and analysis will lead him to master his instrument, while dreams, imaginary stories, sensation, and emotion will be the salt of his performance. But let's go back to our Renaissance and Baroque times. The expressive codes that were established in this stage of history are still in use today, as the basis of our modern knowledge. A few examples. In horse riding, a direct correspondence between the horse gaits and the different time signatures in music was established. In fencing, the three cornerstones of combat are defined as measure, time, and speed. In dance, there are similar definitions as in fencing, such as measure, memory, partimenti of the ground, air, manner, and movement of the body. The characters of theatre, with the clear static nature of the Compagnia dell'arte, begin their journey towards lens influenced by psychology. And in music? With Monteverdi and his contemporaries, music moves from the prima pratica to the second one. In other words, from a horizontal idea of music, counterpoint, to a vertical one, and to employ the rules of oratory in music. It means that Eric can finally express joy and pain, question and answer, climax and relaxation. He has finally found a form to represent his expressive desire. Helicona came to this conclusion. Content and form, emotional and rational, analogical and analytical, must be brought closer together and balanced. A good approach is to physically and emotionally experience actions, to understand the origin, the spark of the expressive code that determined its form. In a nutshell, the strategy that helicona proposes is that of physically getting involved in actions such as horse riding, fencing, dance, and theatre, and reproducing the musical gesture that describe them. Eric then finds himself doing horse exercises, trying to work empathically with horses, following and directing their movements. Then tries the speed and promptness of fencing, trying to understand what it means not to be hurt when playing. Then he experiences what proportion music must have in a given space, when music describes grace and momentum. And then he practices in making people laugh and cry, in measuring the poses to turn around at the right time and trigger an applause. This work of awareness leads us to recognize our feelings, to refine the musical language, to have the strength of tension and the serenity of release, and the determination of wanting to express an inner impulse in an external communication that becomes stronger and clearer. Eric's expressiveness becomes magnetic. But are the formulas of rhetoric and codes of expression the same for everyone? If so, would we all do the same thing? Through the effectiveness of rhetorical formulas, the challenge is to produce a personal work of art. The use and manipulation of expressive code was the result of aesthetic revolution during different historical periods, driven by the idea of greater and greater effectiveness. Also for this reason, it is essential that the improvisational act includes personal research where the exciting energy of the moment is captured, eventually finding the best way to communicate it, balancing a logical and analytical attitude. And the result? The effectiveness of the expressive gesture was identified in the Renaissance as measure and proportion, and in the Baroque period as good taste. What has happened to them today? Perhaps it would be interesting to discuss what buon gusto, good taste, means today. Aware as we are of the breadth of this topic, in Helicona we're limited to work on the awareness of the objective part of taste. In fact, physical emotional activity helps us to become aware of the objective factors, leaving everyone the choice of the subjective part. Working on the objective part of taste means working on four main areas: sensorial, relational, emotional, cognitive area. Sensorial area. In this area, listening and being aware are the first step to understand how to react. Exercises in this area help to develop prompt answers using all the senses. Relational area. Working in this area develops a sense of connection to what we do in the context of interrelations with other musicians, the audience, the space, time, and with styles. Emotional area. Working in this area develops empathic attitude and emotional connection with the other subjects of communication and the content of communication itself. Cognitive area. Exercises in this area place the information that we gather from all disciplines into a coherent space-time system, perceiving and embodying the proportion, the timing, and the effort of a musical gesture. The activity in the four disciplines mentioned above allows us to work on the objective part of taste. In fact, it trains us to continuously evaluate the context in which a choice arises from the awareness of the spark that moves us towards the perception of an external environment, making us respectful protagonists and active listeners. And the subjective part? As a conclusion of this presentation, perhaps we could restart from understanding what the objectives of an artist are. Movere, docere and delectare, move, teach, and delight, have been the aims of communication since Cicero and Quintilian. What are the goals of an artist today? Eric, he would be happy to continue being the protagonist of this video, but it's time to pass the ball, or rather, the bow, to someone else. On the other hand, what a bore it would be if his subjectivity were flattened. In this presentation, I talked about expressive improvisation in relation to content and form, emotionality and rationality, analogical and analytical, of physical activity with horses, fencing, dance, and theater. I talked about rhetoric and codes of expression, measure, and objective good taste. Improvisation could be a winning strategy in many respects. In this presentation, I only touched on the surface on many topics. In fact, at Helicona, there is these and much more. Thank you so much for your patience and attention, and for your dedication to this special subject.